For present purposes, you accept the constitutionality of the four-clause removal provision for the Federal Reserve, and that is what protects the independence of the Federal Reserve. What, in your view, is the purpose of that independence?
It protects the governor, exactly reflecting the plain text of the statute, it protects the governors for removal for policy disagreement or for no reason at all.
What is the broader purpose of that?
To preserve the independence of the Federal Reserve.
And what is the broader purpose of that?
Well, there's a number of reasons that are discussed by their amici, and I think not disputed by us, which is that there is a long tradition of having this exercise of monetary policy be exercised independent of executive influence, and we don't dispute that that's what Congress was doing in that statute. And again, we have not disputed the validity of the four-cause removal restriction here.
And why is that independence important in your view?
We don't dispute the importance of that for many of the reasons that their amici say, but we emphasize that there's a balance struck here. This is not a ironclad, you can never be removed. There is a cause removal authorization.
But on that, your position that there's no judicial review, no process required, no remedy available, very low bar for cause that the president alone determines, I mean, that would weaken, if not shatter, the independence of the Federal Reserve that we just discussed.
We disagree with that, and I would point to the point that the point you made that this is a low bar for cause. In a sense, it's a very high bar. It's a very strong protection because it does protect them from the one thing that Congress was apparently most worried about, which is a removal for policy disagreement.
But it would be in the view of the president who might have a policy disagreement, and there's no judicial review, and the president can just define it on his or her own. Right?
One of the strongest traditions in this court's jurisprudence is the sort of presumption of regularity to the president's action that has applied to this provision, I think, effectively for 112 years, and it continues to do so.
Let's talk about the real-world downstream effects of this, because if this were set as a precedent, it seems to me, just thinking big picture, what goes around comes around. All of the current president's appointees would likely be removed for cause on January 20th, 2029, if there's a Democratic president, or January 20th, 2033. And then we're really at will removal. So what are we doing here? What is, we started, that's why I started with what's the purpose of the independence and the four-cause removal. If we accept all these, no procedure, no judicial review, no remedy, that's what's going to happen, I think. And then where are we? So do you dispute that is, the real world effect?
I cannot predict what future presidents may or may not do, but the argument strikes me as a policy argument.
Well, history is a pretty good guide. Once these tools are unleashed, they are used by both sides, and usually more the second time around. And I think that's what we have to make sure we're, again, that can't drive the decision necessarily. We have to be aware of what we're doing and the consequences of your position for the structure of the government.
2 points there. I dispute the characterization that these tools have been unleashed. The president has always had this tool to remove governors for financial improprieties. Now, the history is, including twice in the last 4 years, governors who have been credibly accused of financial improprieties have resigned. They haven't forced the president to remove them. And I think the more sort of fundamental point is that cause is a standard that is quite deferential to the president. Congress consciously adopted that instead of a more restrictive standard like INM that was, by all appearances, a legislative compromise between two camps, one of which wanted to give the president complete control.
I agree with you that there's a balance here, and so I understand that. I'm not saying there's no interests on the other side here. I get that. But again, thinking about the real world and the brief of the former governors of the Federal Reserve, your position, again, because you say, well, the president can't say it's for policy reasons, which may be what's really, again, not talking about the current situation and other situations in the future, what's really driving it. It incentivizes a president to come up with what, as the Federal Reserve former governors say, trivial or inconsequential or old allegations that are very difficult to disprove. It incentivizes kind of the search and destroy and find something and just put that on a piece of paper, no judicial review, no process, nothing, you're done. I mean, again, what are we doing when we have a system that incentivizes that and leads to that? Now, again, you can dispute that you think it's going to lead to that. And again, I'm not talking about the facts of this case. I don't know the facts of this case, so I'm taking no position on that.
This court has, since Martin against Mott, running all the way through Trump against the United States, Trump against Hawaii, a whole host of decisions, a court had consistently afforded the president the presumption of regularity in his action and consistently declined to probe a president's actions for their subjective motivations. And so in the hypothetical question that you pose, that hypothetical future president should also be afforded the very same sort of deference and
But that leads, I mean, that brief, that amicus brief cites Justice Scalia's dissent in Morrison, which is always a good place to look for wisdom, and the concern that you're putting all these resources, because you can't say it's for policy, you put all these resources, let's find something, anything about this person, and then we're good. And by the way, there's no judicial review, so we're really good, and there's no administrative process.
And again, I disagree with that. I think that that argument, that presumption, when it applied to the president, contradicts two very strong strains in this court's jurisprudence that go back to the founding.
And what's the fear of more process here, in the sense that process protects you, in the sense of helping you make better, more accurate decisions, and process helps you then convince people on the outside that you've made a considered, thorough, appropriate decision? What's the concern about more process?
I don't think we think that process is necessarily bad. In this case, there's two reasons why process is not the right answer, among others. One is in Vermont Yankee. This court said we're not going to dictate procedures to executive agencies. For sure, I should dictate procedures to the president. Our contention is that there already has been a process. There was a social media post that said, look, these two documents contradict each other. And the response was defiance. So there was a chance to tell, in the words of Loudermill, to tell her side of the story, and it wasn't adopted. And in fact, there hasn't been, for months since then, any clear explanation other than it was an inadvertent notation. It's just the kind of inadvertent notation that ordinary people can be indicted for.
And again, none of my questions or comments are about the facts of this case. I don't know the facts of this case, but thank you.